I would like, I got the very general idea what I have to do. So I have to talk about Lithuania, Lithuanians. So I was thinking, what should I do, with all this, lecture? Because for 1 hour, I mean, I can talk without preparation, but it's you still need a little bit to prepare and to think what you should do with this hour. So I would like, to start from the very simple kind of statement, which is very basic and very well understandable, that, you take Lithuanians like from outside, you take them as like taking all into account all the statistics, you look at them, like, the number of the people who are living in this country, what kind of people they are. Usually you don't look at them as a unit full of diversity. You don't look at them as a society full of diversity, because the society is very diverse. They look alike only, from outside. And this is a kind of universal impression. Everybody, whoever is traveling abroad, they get it about the one or another country. So I remember, I see many students from East Asia. So whenever I come to like places like China, Taiwan, or so I would get also very like kind of similar impression that everybody looks alike. But this is not true. I mean, people are different. People all are unique, and so you get the whole diversity, the whole palette, of characters, people, and the different versions of the country's history, past and even present, can be told differently. My task is very difficult because I have to get a kind of impressionist, talk. And I remember once I was helping for Americans to organize, lecture tour in Vietnam, in Hanoi. So Americans were, preparing because they would bring all kinds of rich people who would basically would appreciate the very fact of the war. Then they would contribute money to the U.S. Holocaust Museum. So they had a big choice of what things they should do in Hanoi, in Vietnam. Okay. So there was one former head of CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. There was some former general, also general from Vietnamese army, this and that, all kinds of local characters. So, and they were interviewing these different people, seeing who would serve the purpose of promoting the country. And suddenly they get some strange academic character who is like, with the hair like standing, on his head, looks unshaven, he seemed like easygoing character. So, and we were asking him, what should you do? He said, I can do very easy thing. He said, I can tell you 5,000 years of Vietnamese history in 1 hour. And actually, it's a funny thing, but he was the most popular Mongol. I mean, all these, generals, the former head of CIA, etc., etc. So, the impression is very important. However, what you get in the lecture is very different very often. So I would, on the way here, I got a very funny book, which is called We, the Lithuanians. And it's called the textbook, How to Understand the Lithuanians and to Use Them, in a sense of exploit them. It's written by one lady who actually lived for a long time in Finland. And so she produced this book, which for many patriotic Lithuanians it's considered to be very abusive in a sense, like too much. She's going over the board. She's overcritical. And she claims, at the end of this book, that basically she wrote this book for simple reason, because she doesn't expect the national prize. She doesn't expect the prize for Vincas Kudirka, for culture, okay, for Vincas Kudirka. And also she doesn't expect the state order, to get the state order for this book. And because she's very critical, and many people, as I said, those more traditionally oriented, they hate her, they think that she's abusing them, So in a sense, I took this book just to give a few examples from this book, just to entertain you a little bit. right now we had the changes in the parliament composition because of the elections and the people who are coming to the political science department, you know, and they should be interested about these. So usually the right-wing parties and conservatives, usually they have all kinds of plans for promoting traditionalism. Okay, to promote good values, family values, you know, to the traditional structure of the society, how to strengthen it, etc., etc. And among other things, they were very much in the prognostics, in a sense, you know, speaking about the future, about futurology, about the future, you know, how the future will look like if we go this or another way. So what they did, I mean, in the strategy Lithuania 2030, I will not write anything, okay. So in the strategy Lithuania 2030, they wrote that 60% of Lithuanians should be proud of their identity. 60%. 60% of the Lithuanians should be proud in 2030 of their identity. Okay, so if they should be proud in the future, so what is the state of affairs right now? Okay, statistics are showing the following thing in 2009. That only 22% of Lithuanians are proud to be Lithuanians. Yeah. Those who are barely satisfied are 44%. They say, it's okay. Okay. There are those 23% who claim that they are dissatisfied with the, you know, their status of their identity, and they are unhappy to be Lithuanians. Like when we are speaking about karma, you know, and Buddhism, you know, so they are unhappy in this present life. And those who are completely unhappy about everything else, you know, who are like, let's say, kind of depressed characters, those are making like around 11%. 11% of population. So, and then a couple of other things that, you know, would show what kind of, you know, in public discourse, in public talking, you know, where emphasis is put. What Lithuanians don't like much, and the most, it claims that 83.3% of Lithuanians don't tolerate infidelity in the family. Infidelity. And then she writes, actually, in the quotes, in the brackets, do you think it's truth? It's like, sure, no. So, and then 82.6% don't tolerate homosexual relations. Okay? So this is statistics. 59.9% abortions. 45.5% don't like illegitimate born children. And 43% wouldn't tolerate euthanasia. Okay, euthanasia. So this is a kind of common general outlook of these Lithuanians who are trying to talk right now. And in a sense, her claims, I mean, reflect in all kinds of statistics. So we have subjective well-being in 97 countries. So well, you understand a little bit in statistics. So the mean is 1.57. I need chalk probably, not sure. So the mean is in all countries. I mean, there are those who are very happy with everything, like the Danes. Denmark is 4. 24. And Lithuanians are, you can guess where they are. Minus. The worst country in this respect is Zimbabwe. Okay, minus. Zimbabwe in Africa. And the happiest, I mean, just to mention, I mean, just for the fun, you know, Denmark is 424, as I said, you know, then Puerto Rico, it's nice climate here. 421, Colombia, though with all the guerrilla warfare, you know, Shining Pass and Marxist organizations, etc., you know. Okay, so they have 418. Then Iceland, far away, who knows where is Iceland, you know. So you have 4.4. 15, etc., etc., etc. So Lithuania is somewhere at the back. Minus. Okay. Another issue naturally is related to economy, you know, because well-being, everyday life is very much related to where you live, what, you know, what kind of goods you can consume, you know, what is your quality of life, and it's very much is depicted. These statistics are very often, you know, demonstrated through so-called the most problematic factors for doing business in certain countries. So what are the most problematic factors doing business in Lithuania? Basically those factors that obstruct, you know, well-being and happiness of the people. Okay? So number one, inefficient government bureaucracy. Okay? Then the second point is tax regulations. Then tax rates, naturally everywhere tax rates. Okay, then corruption, 11%. And then access to financing. So to find money is always, you know, for the goods and for iPods, etc. It's not easy. Okay. And then you have restrictive labor regulations. So this is not the most important. I mean, you cannot fire somebody you don't like so easily. So in this country, this is a problem. Okay, but anyway, who of you came from kind of post-communist countries? I mean, not apart from present communist countries. Yeah. 1, 2, who else? Okay. 3, 4, 5. Okay. So basically, as you know, Lithuania is also post-communist democracy. And they are in the stage, I mean, if to talk in the language of political science, a kind of post-consolidational stage. What does it mean? Basically, though formally we get, you know, relatively well-functioning democracy, you know, multi-party regime, regular elections, statistics on every front more or less are okay. However, there is a widespread dissatisfaction with the quality of democracy. So basically, we don't have as a society, consolidated civil culture. For some of the societies in the world, civil culture is completely foreign, so nothing to be, you know, ashamed of or something. But, and also there is a problem with, let's say, with the democratic behavior. Democratic behavior, not in a larger sense, you know, voting for this or another party, but being democratic yourself. You know, and creating democratic environment among yourself, you know, in a workplace and wherever you are. So this element is still very problematic, and all the researchers were talking about the weakness of the processes that were related to the consolidation. Basically, in the society, despite the formal, you know, democratic frame, you have fragmented interests. You have functioning of the large number and excessive number of not democratic values. And on a final note, I mean, it badly influences social capital in the country. So there is a lack of relative social egalitarianism. So where, you know, people think very often in hierarchical terms, where somebody, if he's the dean, then he's important, okay? Just I should be important just because I know something, or I'm fun, you know, to be this, etc., etc. But I'm important because I'm the dean. So this kind of hierarchical thinking is very often taken, you know, as a kind of a must. Okay, it's a must. So there is no very often solidarity. and it's shown in the statistics. I'm not going into the details. Very often there is lack of solidarity, and there is lack of trust, which is based on self-autonomy, on the ideas of self-autonomy, that you are self-sufficient. I mean, you need somebody to ask for this or that, you know. And if if you are making your way around, you are okay. I mean, but if you are saying that I can do everything myself, then you are. Nobody takes you seriously, because nobody thinks that you can make yourself everything your own. Okay. So in 2007, if we take like the journal The Economist, they branded Lithuania as a kind of democracy which lacks a lot of quality. It's basically democracy without quality. They branded Lithuania democracy without quality in 2007. And this is despite all the kind of quieting and appeasing rhetoric which is coming like from places like Freedom House, for example, Freedom House, which says that in all democratic rankings, Lithuania is growing, more and more. The quality of life is getting better, this and that, performance of economy is going up, and however, everything this is going in some kind of, let's say, in the formal sphere, where you would get, larger numbers, for example, of trade unions. You will have, number of non-governmental organizations increasing in the country. However, most often everybody would ignore what kind of quality of action you have in the country. Nobody talks about the quality of action. What kind of influence on the political process all these organizations and informal organizations can make. So these discussions are not present. Not present. Plus, the society has relatively strong authoritarian tendencies. As I said, from the very beginning, this orientation towards the hierarchy, we're talking about hierarchical structures. So the very society is a kind of very authoritarian oriented, very often. Though they have democratic structure, however, very often they prefer a kind of strong leader who will tell them what to do. What to do. So, but I don't think some people prefer, the political leader who is like in the father's role, he's a father, and he tells everybody what he should do or she should do, But in principle, let's say in modern democracies, we're talking about, let's say, more pro-choice situations, So basically, when we're talking about Lithuania in present, we're talking about kind of civilizational incompetence of the society, civilizational incompetence, because this is related to self-image of Lithuanians. Despite the very fact I mentioned, that they are not unhappy to be, or majority unhappy to be Lithuanians. However, they perceive themselves as a part of the, let's say, Western milieu, Western world, Western civilization, which implies, all kinds of Western values. And we can name all these values. However, here in the country we have a separate social subculture, which is not very much prone for democracy. Not very much prone for democracy. And basically here we are talking about everyday authoritarianism. Everyday authoritarianism. So, when we're talking about the kind of practical implications of whatever I tell you, so, because there is a kind of this split in people's mind, where on one part they see themselves as being very democratic, let's say, part of the Western world. At the same time, the reality is very different. So wherever you want something, you tell them that you want something. don't listen whatever they tell you. So you insist on your rights, okay? So this is very simple advice in everyday dealings with the Lithuanians. You tell them what you want, okay? Don't be afraid to tell her what you want. Jimante is sitting here, so she will have a lot of work to do with you. So whenever, I mean, it's not only her, you know, you're telling, but everybody around. I mean, don't be afraid. Tell what you know what you want. Because otherwise, if you are doing and you're following the advice or order from somebody else, you know, then they don't take you seriously. Don't take you seriously. This is a kind of implication from everyday function in the society. And I have a good colleague of mine who is a very authoritarian type of professor, like screaming, etc. So he tells me, if you don't scream at me, you don't respect me. Because I'm screaming at you, and if you're listening and you're succumbing, or you're saying, okay, 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 so you don't take me seriously. So I'm kind of making fun out of it, but there is an element of truth in whatever I'm saying. So always, you know, insist on your rights. You say, you know, it's like something, you know, you're unhappy about something, about the dorms, I don't know about anything. You insist on your rights. You need this or that. So this is a kind of, you know, very simple, let's say, very simple first advice, you know, what you should do in this country whenever you're here. And when we're talking about academic level, up to now, nobody, you know, really looked at these issues in detail. Nobody studied in detail. Very often people would, you know, claim, we have this and that kind of culture, you know. Because of that, you have this and that, you know, situation. But however, these are like generalizations at the macro level. Generalizations at the macro level. And we are not recovering the real essence of what is going in the society. However, from what I told you already, basically, you have to remember, you know, to claim your rights on one side. However, also you have to participate and be yourself, you know, kind of self-educating, you know, subject of civil society. So in a sense, you have to be all the time, you know, proactive and educate everybody around yourself, and, you know, try to be educating yourself as well. This is an ongoing process. So the main factors who are influencing us, I mean, basically, it reflects on other issues, larger societal issues, that basically lack of solidarity, lack of tolerance, and there is no culture of trust. So everybody looks suspiciously first at you. So there is no, like, they are not very open, Lithuanians. There is no, I mean, despite everything, whatever they tell you, and they, you know, very often they claim that they are very open, and they trust you. Usually they don't trust you at first. But this is, you know, all over in the world. I mean, we have these tendencies. And for example, if you look at statistics, you see that, for example, Lithuania is somewhere in the middle. For example, in Great Britain, 30% of people don't trust the others. Okay? In Lithuania, it's 25%. So it's not the worst case, but it's not the best as well. It's not the best. And we have certain statistics from 1990 to 2005. So basically, we have also the situation where about 1/3 of the population claims that you can trust majority of the people. At the same time, 70% of people are claiming that you have to be careful with the others. You have to be careful. with the others. Regarding tolerance, because you're coming from different countries and coming from different, let's say, backgrounds, cultures, and languages, etc., etc. So the country is not the most tolerant. I'm not frightening you. Don't take me that I'm telling what to expect potentially. So I'm not telling that it's something bad going to happen, but overall, as in many northern countries, I mean, it's relatively northern country, people are not, if they don't trust you, I mean, generally, very often they don't tolerate you. Yeah? There's element of toleration is also important. And basically, it's interesting that at the rhetorical level, majority of the Lithuanians would say that, yes, they are very tolerant. They're very tolerant. They would claim that they are tolerant. But when you get specific about this or another group, you would see that they have a lot of problems. And in all the statistical surveys, Lithuanians usually tend, to claim that tolerance is not an issue in Lithuania because Lithuanians are naturally tolerant. Because they are naturally tolerant. Okay? This is not an issue. And it's a little bit different from the situation what you have in places like Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, Belgium, Iceland. I mentioned the happiest country, Iceland, where let's say 90% of the population would say that tolerance is an undeniable part of the people, and it's undeniable personal quality of everyone. Undeniable personal quality of everyone. So while, for example, in Sweden, over 90% of the people think that the tolerance should be developed and educated further in the country, in Lithuania, only 59% of the people think that this is a quality that should be, promoted further. Because and it's natural, because the majority of the people think that they are tolerant enough. Okay. Okay, so if you want to have civil dialogue, okay, if you want to, and collective action in any of the societies, all your co-citizens should be understood as, let's say, fellow countrymen, fellow countrymen. And in this respect, only this way you build, the society which is, basing its existence on democratic values. And it's interesting that the majority of the Lithuanians don't think highly of their fellow citizens, and they don't feel solidarity with their co-citizens. They're very individualistic. Okay, individualistic. And very often they are confusing, the personal gains and moral, let's say, and moral, ethical aspects of behavior. Very often, what's interesting that in the statistics, majority would claim that they are doing something because there is that somebody else, not them, but somebody else is doing something good because he has some kind of rational calculation. And this is majority. Rational calculation. And naturally we have others, it's a major split in the society who claim that we are doing just good, something good because we want to do good and because we are good people. Yeah. So there is, you will meet somebody who is doing something out of rational calculation, and those who would say, I'm doing just because I like you or just because I need to do it, etc., etc. So you. But the statistics are not very, let's say, the statistics are not very encouraging. Okay, so another issue is related to the very much to the tolerance issue, and it's bounded with the issues of minorities. Usually you would perceive Lithuania as a kind of very mono-ethnic country, as a rule. Whatever you read in all these textbooks, you know, it's very mono. However, you have to remember that when we go back in the history, the further we go in the history back, the more diverse and multilingual the country was, as in any other country, you know. The further you go in history, and it's very different from all these nationalist projections which are claiming that there was time when people, there were kind of proto-Lithuanians who, like in our days, you know, Lithuanians would sit around the bonfire, you know, and would, you know, speak the same language, etc. And basically, it's a kind of projection. If you, some of you saw the movie which is called Flintstones. Who saw the movie Flintstones? It's a cartoon, some multiplication. Flintstones. So this kind of thinking, I mean, we have very popular in all kinds of, you know, nationalist, contemporary nationalist projections. Basically, this world in the past is the same as the world at present. There were the cars, you know. There were, you know, airplanes. You would fly some kind of dragon in the past, you know, like in Flintstones. So there is this kind of funny projection that people would think that the society, contemporary society, is like our society in the past. And this is not true. It's nothing to do with historical evidence. The historical evidence right now, you would see, you know, that the majority of the country speaks Lithuanian language, and they're very often, you know, proud of this language. You know, they claim that this is the oldest and the Indo-European, closest to the Proto-Indo-European language. So all kinds of things you would, you know, hear about Lithuania. Usually they are like very kind of philology-driven society, which is, you know, identifying the boundaries of who is one of them and who is not one of them in terms of, in linguistic terms. In a sense, if you speak Lithuanian, then you're a member of Lithuanian community, you are Lithuanian, etc. So if you don't speak Lithuanian, you are. Tell this to Chinese who don't speak Mandarin, okay? Just making a joke. Okay? There are Chinese who don't speak Mandarin, so they are Chinese, okay? So, but for Lithuanians, it's completely incomprehensible. If you speak Lithuanian, then you're a member of Lithuanian society, you are Lithuanian, etc., etc. And the best is to speak without an accent. But when you look back in the ages, not far away from, you know, from our days, for example, we have the first census done in the Tsarist Russia, in 1997. In the present day borders of the present day Lithuania, you would have 59% of the population speaking Lithuanian. Only 59%. And we'll have, you know, questions answers session, and so we can ask, you know, what were the rest of the president. So 59%. So, and when we go, you know, further back in the history, for example, if you take 17th century, what talking to me? 17th century. In the reformed, so-called Calvinist communities in the country, and these communities would speak, you know, the language of the church would be the language of the people. So in the Western Lithuania, which is right now perceived as like 100%, you know, true Lithuanian, you would have only 43% of the sermons and services given in Lithuania. In Eastern Lithuania, around Vilnius, you are in the center right now, only 8% of the sermons were in Lithuania. And right now, if you go around, you see the signs, the streets, the people speaking one language, and it seems a little bit funny. Okay. It's not. I mean, for me, it's funny because, you know, I think in terms of history, you take it as a given fact. You kind of, you know, you're coming from outside and you take this kind of essentialist position where something is given, something is not. So you basically have a situation where this is given. Okay, so basically we have, you know, the present storytelling of what is Lithuania, and the tourist textbooks for the tourists who are like reading all kinds of material, or you go to Wikipedia or whatever. A little bit different from reality, what we know in the scholarship, let's say, and what we know in the academia. Okay, but because you are not the tourist you came to study, so it's a very good advantage. We have certain you and us. We all have certain advantage over the others because we can learn, you know, the real situation. So another advice, you know, try to study and, you know, to learn about the country, because it's very different from what you see from outside. It's very different from what you see from outside. And there are all kinds of smaller subgroups in terms of values, culture, traditions, if you like. Those groups that are a little bit differ from the majority groups. Differ from the majority groups. Very often, because as I said, you know, Lithuania as a society is a philology and linguistics-driven society. They perceive the boundaries of itself, you know, in terms of linguistics and language. However, inside, even inside in terms of language, you have relatively big differences. Though the country is technically relatively small, 65,000 square kilometers. So this is a relatively small country. Another important issue that in the national narrative, and this is related a little bit to the distrust, you have all kinds of different variations of it. I'm not going into the theory about telling about the narratives, I mean, what kind of narratives we can have in one another country, and what kind of presentations of the past we can have. But in this kind of country, we have few narratives, which are different. And in political discourse, in the political talking, we have a couple of dominant narratives who are competing with each other. So there is no kind of common denominator, common narrative which would be dominating the whole, you know, political scene. But basically, when we're talking about Lithuania and Lithuanians would blame the others for all their misfortunes. Somebody else is, you know, guilty. The Poles, the Germans, you know, the Russians, but not themselves. So, but they are not themselves. And this is kind of part of this nationalist narrative, which is relatively dominant in every country. Because every, you know, it's not us, the us, you know, we are, to a certain extent, very perfect, you know, perfect. We know what to do, how to do it, how to behave. At the same time, being Lithuanian implies certain norms of behavior. But if you demand something from the outside world and you don't follow these rules yourself, and as we saw, you know, from all these presentations, statistics, etc., very often the Lithuanians are not very, let's say, democratic and ruling, etc., etc. Ruly people. They are not very ruly people. So you have all these kind of differences and problems. You have all these kind of problems. Because you have projections on the others that they are bad, so there is no incentive. There is no incentive for the majority of the people who would try usually. And in basically this problem we have all over, you know, in all of the civilizations in different cultures where somebody else, you know, guilty. Somebody else is guilty. You know, let's say, you know, for the Koreans, probably the Japanese, for the Japanese Koreans, etc., etc. So everybody tends to, you know, to blame somebody else, you know, for this or that. But so you have this tendency. But the problem is this tendency that basically there is no incentive for yourself to improve, to change. You know, and if you try to speak like this lady, you know, Laima Lavasta, her photos over here, just so you face, you know, serious problems because the whole societal development it's not bringing you anywhere. I mean, you are not moving anywhere. And very often when you take everything as a given, as a given, and in this country very often people take whatever they practice, whatever they do as a given fact, as a fact in itself and of great value. You have a problem, you know, because people are not improving, they are not changing the ways of life, they are not adapting, you know, they are not changing, you know, they are not getting better to the foreigners, or in a good sense or in a bad sense, you know, it depends. Because, like, for example, do you know that the most by all the statistics of international, I think, tourist urbanization, if I'm not mistaken, in the questionnaires of all the countries which are the most unfriendly to the foreigners, you can guess which country is the most unfriendly to the foreigners.
Kazakhstan.
What?
Kazakhstan.
No, Kazakhstan. Not many people know Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is okay. So what? France. France is number one. As a country, it's famous as a country which is not, you know, basically where tourists are not respected. Because so many of them, they are coming, they appreciate French culture, cuisine, blah, 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 this and that, but then you don't get for what you pay. Okay? So it's better to go to Kazakhstan, or to live for the matter of sake of to Lithuania instead of France. This is also the matter of fact. If you want to get something different quality, etc., etc. So this is also kind of motto. And okay. So I think I could talk, you know, for much longer, but because we have questions and answers piece of time, like 15 minutes. So I would ask you and urge you, you know, to give questions. I'm open to any questions, so don't be afraid. And also feel free, you know. And because this kind of is orientation session, so you feel free, you know, about asking anything. You know, you can ask even from very practical details, and it would be something much more sophisticated academically. You know, okay? No? So who has questions? Don't be shy. Yes.
Actually, I just forgot about the name of the Prime Minister, the present Prime Minister.
Buttigieg, okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I heard that until 25th, they are going to change to euro from the ritas.
Okay.
So, but it is, I'm not sure it is the how the Lithuanians think about the changing the euro. Currency, is it good, positive?
You asking, are they attached to the currency and to these notes and to the, you know, to the coins? There are, you know, I can answer this question in, you know, in different versions, you know, differently. But one of the answers is that yes, because Lithuania is part of the European Union, and you see big advantages of financially being part of the larger unit. It means not only being in EU, but being part of the Euro zone. So they see a lot of advantages. Right now, you know that Lithuanian currency, litas, is pegged to euro. It's pegged to euro. It's so exchange. The exchange rate is constant. It's 3.45 per 1 euro. Okay, 3.45 liters per 1 euro. I mean, when you buy or you go to the machine, you know, whatever you exchange, the margins are very small, like 2 cents or whatever, you know, for exchange. But basically, so the exchange rate is 3.45, roughly. So it's 3.45, additional couple of numbers after 44, I think. So you have 1 euro, so it's pegged to euro, and it's pegged to euro from 2001. Because as you know, from 2001 there was already, I mean, in 2000 started the exchange rate of euro going up vis-a-vis US dollar. In 2001, up to 2001, Lithuania was pegged to US dollar. The local currency was pegged to US dollar. Then it was 4 liters per 1 US dollar. USD. Okay. 1 USD. So they changed to euro when the exchange rate of euro started to go up. So economy, finally, the final analysis, individuals and the economy lost a lot because they pegged at the moment when euro started to go up in price. So it started to pay off to import into the country, but not produce anything in the country. Because it became expensive in terms of production because the euro was going. The exchange rate of euro was based on the economies like Germany and France, but not on the economy like Lithuania. Lithuania, I mean, would benefit from from being not in eurozone if they had flexible exchange rate or they stayed where they were with the US dollar. So in the due course of these, whatever, 12 years, Lithuania up to now, I mean, I think in terms of development lost a lot because they didn't, they had pegged currency. This is my thinking. So people usually would think, about if they get euro, they get certain, they would look something like if you have US, it's like in Puerto Rico, it's like, okay, Costa, in Puerto Rico. I mean, if you have US dollar, but you are still not United States. Okay, in Puerto Rico you have US dollar, but you are not United States. So they want to become right now the member of basically they were voting a couple of times, so they want to become the members of United States of America, Puerto Rico. Yeah. So they're trying hard. And here you have opposite situation where you don't have euro, but you are a member of European Union. So mentally, I mean, there is this kind of imagination of that, if suddenly you become member of European Union, you'll become like, I don't know, Germany, Netherlands, or whatever. As we know, it doesn't come automatically, and look at Estonia or look at the places like Slovakia, for example. Slovakia didn't become, despite everything, didn't become, this euro didn't become Austria, so Austria is Austria and Slovakia is Slovakia. There was big boom, development because of Austrian nonsense, because it's very well located in between different countries. And with good macroeconomic policies, they moved very well with euro. But at the same time, for the consumer, everybody would go shopping to Poland or to Hungary. It's cheaper. Why would they do this? Because it's cheaper. So you will have the same thing going on here. For example, there are big differences. We are not far away from Poland, 100 kilometers. Okay? Kaunas is not far away from Poland. So, because Lipas is pegged and the Polish zloty, the Polish currency, has a flexible exchange rate, you have the situation where many Lithuanians from this area, they go shopping to Poland. It's cheaper. So all the supermarkets, I mean, it's more or less flooded by the Lithuanians who would shop, it's much cheaper in Poland because of the flexible exchange rate vis-a-vis euro. And in Lithuania, we don't have flexible exchange rate with euro. We have pegged currency. So I hope I managed to answer your question. So the expectations image is one thing, the practical consequences for the economy, which is basically oriented towards if you want to create mass employment and mass production, you basically have to have cheap everything cheap labor, taxes on individual taxes low, etc., etc. But with euro, it's more difficult to create. Let's say it's more difficult to create. I'm not saying that let's say euro skepticism. No, I'm not. But there are problems in certain sectors naturally because of euro coming into the forefront. So there are projections when they would have euro. There are projections. was speaking about 2015, most probably in 2017, I think. Not 2015. Okay.
What is the position of Lithuania about federalism in the European Union?
Actually, I was one of the co-founders of this federalist association in Lithuania, Euro Federalism. So in a sense, I'm put, certain let's say, social capital into this. So when you ask my opinion, I think it will go into the direction of the federalization. It will go in the direction of federalization naturally because there was two big differences and two big distances between the political setup and economic setup. Economic setup naturally was you had much greater economic integration but lacking political integration. And we know all these problems, lack of trust for the Brussels, lack of democratic consent for whatever Brussels is doing, etc., etc. So I think with federalization, all these, let's say, these balances will come into more or less balance. But I think the tendency will be in the European Union that it will go in the direction of federalization, naturally. I don't see any other option. There is no any other way. It's a simple reality. I mean, if you want to compete, if you want to keep certain standards of whatever, social welfare, living, whatever, of everything, you have to be compatible. And these smaller national states, you can see clearly they are not compatible to the extent we would like them to be compatible. Plus, you see that very often at the national level, I mean, if you look at the south of Europe, I mean, what happened because of the fiscal policies of the governments, so you see all the deficiencies of being independent, I mean, in this European context. But this is completely, let's say, economic rationale, I would say. Economic interest would be driving this political integration. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I mean, for me it was. No. What else? What else bothers you? What else is in your mind? Yes.
Can you tell us about some positive aspects of Lithuania and the Lithuanian people? Because most of them quite negative.
I started from negative because everybody else would tell you positive. I know.
In your opinion, what would be some of the positive aspects?
Positive aspects, I think. If you read this book, I mean, you will not find any positive aspects. We see this guy sitting in the pond. I mean, I can send around with nice pictures around. Positive aspects, because they are individualist very often, they are not like, it's difficult for them to do business together. So when they are doing something individually, they are very good at the work or whatever professions that are, let's say, based on one kind or another kind of individualism. So they are not bad at, as an individuals, but as a whole, it's very difficult to deal with them because they are very often, unruly. It's very difficult to get consensus with them. But when you're dealing on the individual basis, they can be very helpful. You can do with them excellent things. But as a society, in terms of managing and organizing itself, it has a lot of deficiencies. So whatever is opposite to that, whenever you don't need organization and putting your interests together and managing these interests together, then on everything else they are perfect. So from that point, from the point of individualism, I mean, they are very good, I think. This is my perspective. And as I said, though I was, started from negative, but I did it intentionally because, as I said, you would get all this kind of propaganda whenever you come to the, new country that's excellent, everything is good. So. No. What else? Yes.
Also, you said that there's a lot of distrust. So where do you think this distrust comes from? Do you think maybe the socialist period has influenced it? Because I come from Bulgaria. Distrust is a big problem.
Yeah, I think Lithuania is just below Bulgaria, like for something.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, for a few points of the percent, yeah. Distrust, yeah, I mean, we can, I think in terms of when we're talking about the social theory, sociology, even, comparative historical sociology, for example, okay? So I think the main problem that this country didn't have, proper, let's say, urban culture. So there was a jump, like, everybody was, is there anybody from Mongolia? Nobody from Mongolia. Okay, so I can talk about Mongolia. Like in the Soviet period, everybody would talk, that Mongolian society came from the feudalism. I mean, in terms of Marxist theory. I mean, we're talking about the social theory right now, okay, about Marxist ideology. So in terms of Marxist ideology, Mongolians jumped from feudalism into advanced socialist society, not being in the capitalism. Okay, so this is part of Soviet type of cliche. However, when we look at the reality of where all these East Central European countries were, you have a very different situation. I mean, Czech Republic is very different from what you have, for example, in the Baltics, or what you have in Bulgaria or Romania. So the problem with Lithuania, and especially with Lithuania, and if you have to compare Lithuania with, for example, Estonia or Latvia, that basically here you have very weak tradition of urban living together. For urban settle. I mean, traditional milieu and traditional mentality is coming from the farmer's background. Majority of the people would come from the village, and they would never experience, need to live together in the city. So there was no need for coordination, planning, etc., etc. So in terms of disadvantages, basically this mistrust is coming with this kind of, I would say, village culture. Villages usually are not trustful because everybody else, because they don't see diversity around. You live on your farm, what do you see? A couple of birds flying around, and every human who is passing by, you are scared of, because he can be friend, but and then you are coming into the very simple things like, for example, family making. I mean, when you look at the statistics, 19th century Lithuania, for example, in the 60s, 70s, the average groom and bride would come from the distance around maximum 15 kilometers, 1-5. So they would live apart from each other 15 kilometers. Why? The reason is very simple. I mean, in one day, how long can you travel with the horse? For a day. Okay? No. So you have very low mobility. You have, because of that, relatively low social mobility. You have lack of diversity. And naturally, when you have lack of diversity, you have mistrust, because you distrust others who are different from you. So I would take socialism. Yes, socialism also, but socialism was replicating, in a sense, let's say, the pre-socialist problems of the societies. Very often they were strengthening certain type of societal being together. They were stressing certain values. They would talk about the folk culture in Bulgaria as well. You wouldn't talk about Hohenzollern, okay, dynasty, which was, you would talk about the true essence of Bulgarians, as a folk people, So this was a kind of universal. But this was also implying, a kind of not being part of this urban culture, city culture. So naturally people didn't have these habit skills and etc., etc. So and only later, naturally, they became kind of put together, these cities. They had to live somehow, to cohabitate together, to understand each other. But it's a long and slow process. And in different societies, it works very differently. In Lithuania, it's not easy process. You have to compare, for example, even with Estonia and Latvia. For example, Latvia, which is very close to here, okay, Latvia in 1900, it's over 50% of population already lived in the cities by. Over 50 in Lithuania. In 1940, 80% were living in the villages. So this is the main difference. And when, for example, I mean, is somebody from Latvia? Nobody. Okay. So usually Lithuanians would say, well, Latvians have better, you know, pop music. Because pop music is a natural part of the urban culture. So it has, you know, to be grown and developed, whatever, you know, authentically in the place where it was part of the urban culture, you know, pop music. So if you just copy something John Lennon, you know, so you're not becoming John Lennon yourself, you know, so this, you know, you have, you know, to grow into this and to be part of this culture. So I hope I managed to answer your question. No. Okay, everybody's looking at the watches. So, okay, thank you very much for your attention. You know, don't take seriously whatever I told you. Just, you know, enjoy the place. Try to learn as much as possible every day. Get friends and everything will be okay. Yeah.